Hey everyone, welcome to this live stream. Today I'm gonna use this found object. It's my roommate's boot, and I wanted to use something that I thought was interesting that I had offhand that was kind of simple, so we could just go through the whole workflow of it. Maybe we'll see how far I get on the live stream, and yeah, and I put up a reference here so you can see what I'm looking at because I'm not going to be holding it up the whole time. But I wanted to use a physical object because studying three-dimensional objects, not in pictures, kind of, helps you understand 3D a little bit better. Like when you're making something, you don't always have this to go off of, but it's just kind of, it's like another degree of removal if you're, making 3D objects on a 2D screen, and then your reference is also 2D. But it's a lot better if you have 3D reference, right? Makes sense. So right here, I'm just gonna mock up this boot and extrude this, and I'm gonna keep this topology pretty simple. And when I extrude that, it creates this pole here. So, and a pole is disruption in the flow, so the edges go this way or this way, and you can see, like, as opposed to these sides being just 3 corners, which isn't very dense. Right here, this is a 5 corners. Yeah, so when you subdivide it, it adds a lot. Hey DSO, welcome back. And right now I'm not quite worrying about scale. There's certain features in Sculpt, like if I were using the cloth brush or the layer brush, where the scale would matter. Hey Digital, welcome back. Sorry if you guys missed me. Took a few days of break after all that November stuff. So, let's get started. So, main thing here is I'm going to be using the multi-res modifier, and what that is really great for is that you're sculpting on stuff that already has good topology. So, theoretically, if everything else in the workflow lines up, I don't have to retopologize or, which is redoing the geometry by tracing it. If you look on my channel, there's other videos on retopology. So if I look at this and I go into just the multi-res modifier, and multi-res modifiers, it's really just a subdivide modifier, but it allows you to go between levels. And so if you do something on this level, you can make it affect lower levels and vice versa. And you'll see the intricacies of how that works when I bake it together. I don't have a lot of desk space, so it's kind of funny. Just trying to, set this down and then look at it. So there's a little bit of space over there, so I'm just going to be looking at it, taking advantage of this reference here. Indeed, however, something more interesting. Sorry, what are you responding to, DSO? Maybe there was a bit of a delay, I'm not sure. I did say a lot of things. Oh, wait, let me just... 1 second. Okay, and I'm back. Okay, so, I have this stylus, and that it's really helpful for sculpting because you have control over the size and strength according to the pressure, which you can toggle with this. I think I'll actually just have it on strength right here, so the size of my brush strokes is more consistent. Oh, it's more interesting than nodes? Okay, awesome. I'm glad I can do more of something you're satisfied with, because I won't be going back to nodes probably until next year if I decide to do that again. But right now I'm using this to block up, but I think the quickest way to block up shapes is with the grab brush, because mainly everything you move is perpendicular to it's easier to move things perpendicular to your view. So corner like this, rather than adding stuff, because you have better judgment of the depth. But these different mat cap settings can help you with that as well. I think in this case, let's use clay. Why not? And yeah, so I'm just going to bring this in here, and let's take a look at the sole right here. You know what? I did the funniest thing. This is the other boot that I took, and all these are of the other foot. So I'm all turned around, but this is live, so I won't take the time to sort that out. But yeah, fortunately, there's enough good reference here, the different views. You notice I'm not really tracing it here because I want this to be a sketch. This is like an exercise in me understanding the forms. And, you know, I can compare and bring reference into Blender to see if that's right at the end. But I think you kind of lose artistic flair that you get from being kind of a little bit inaccurate and more focused on the forms. Even like a side and front view, it's not going to give you a very clear indication on the quarter view. And this is, you know, that stuff is going to be left to feel or whatever. So that's totally necessary. And yeah, so we have this, and then there's this nice slope on the boot. Here. Like nodes are very interesting, but kind of boring. Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on that. Aren't boots easier to model than compared to what? Let's yeah. Right now, like I could add more geometry to this, and that, you know, on my computer that the sculpting would be totally fine to add like another subdivision. But you know, right now I'm just focusing on the big shapes, so it doesn't matter so much. But there might be little details that you want in your strokes. So maybe you want to go to a higher subdivision level earlier on. I think, yeah, good question to you. So I think with boots, the thing about them is that they have these curvy forms, these natural forms, and you would want to sculpt in these wrinkles too. That wouldn't be done with the texture because they're too large, unless the character was from like really far away, and then you could just like, you know, paint on some wrinkles, and you wouldn't even bother with any like real materials on it either. But yeah, like I pretty much modeled it. I had the topology right there. That's all you would want to complicate it, is just extruding it that way and that way. That's like the most modeling you're gonna do. I mean, there's these smaller details, and I might add these on as geometry. I haven't decided yet. Those parts are just so small. So like for real-time character, you probably might not. I mean, it's helpful to make things exactly as they would be made, and but yeah, no, right now I'm just attacking that immediately, but I think that's a bit premature because we need to get some more of these shapes. And I think draw sharp, the profile of this is what I like for doing wrinkles because it's a sharp point, and you're never going to get it right with the slope because it's you know, if you look at this, it looks like that, but a wrinkle, it might be more like this, depending on, so more of a slope on one side or something, so you kind of have to do a few strokes to get the slope right. Right here we're getting some topology, you know, it's stretched out over there, and we can kind of fix this with, and also, this toolbar, I could totally drag this out, and this is a much better layout, so I don't have to scroll down all the time. Yeah, the difference between the draw sharp brush and the crease brush is that there's pinching on the crease brush. I mean, sorry, on, yeah, I think this is the, yeah, so there's a pinch brush. Is that what you mean by crease brush? Because I'm blinking on if there's that other one, but yeah, the difference is this. The arrows right here, it pinches together, and sometimes you might want that because with a stronger slope you want stronger change in the slope, you want more topology. But if it's really sharp and small, I don't want to sort of waste topology on that. Yeah, the blue one above flat. Oh yeah, let's see. Sorry about this. Yes, so I think this one there is also some pinching right here. Yeah, and I guess that does work well for indentations. The only because it is bringing the topology together. I don't use those so often, just because I like having consistent topology in those areas. But yeah, they're probably a fine way to go. Really, you could do most things with just these brushes, and some of these they just do a particular thing which can kind of save you a little bit of time, but it's all just adjusting things until you have a final result. Yeah, so now we have this two-face, the side I've worked on the other. Yeah, exactly. It brings stuff together. Yeah. Right. Thanks to you. So, and I'm still using that. Yeah. With hoping control, the drawing. Yeah, maybe I guess I don't use the other one enough to make a good comparison. Let's go over here in PureRef, and again, use PureRef is a great way of compiling resources. If you use it, you'll see why. It's just really makes the whole process of organizing and collecting reference a lot easier. Yeah, holding control is really important. Yeah, because then you can switch between positive, negative, and sorry if I didn't highlight. That's what I'm doing here, which is really helpful. And we, I think the most apparent mistakes in sculpting that take a long time to correct isn't the overall shape, but these sharp face changes. If we look at this curve here, we want this to be the right width. I think, yeah, and just the wobble. You want to minimize how wobbly everything looks, because it's really easy to fall into wobbliness, and polishing that can take time or discipline, and yeah. So just looking at the shoe, it's the heel, trying to get that roundness right. Like clay strips, yeah. Clay strips is perfect for gradually building up. I would, if you saw my time lapse of sculpting Ian McKellen, it's my first Blender video, or Blender process video, and if you watch that video, I think most of the time I'm using just clay strips, because when you're doing subtle things like a face, that's it's really helpful for controlling something like that. So on the shoe, it's kind of the awkward thing about a shoe is that it is hollow on the inside, but this has kind of some thickness, but that gets really messy when you're sculpting, because if things are really close together, they push out on the other sides, and if you see this, this tongue is connected down here, and then it's loose all the way up here, but then gets kind of, it sticks to where the laces are, and so there's some kind of awkward topology. But if I were to rip this out, or immediately remove the top right here, that could lead to some issues with the sculpt. And yeah, so I can remove that stuff later. Right now it's not a problem, but if I removed it, I could kind of the equivalent of falling into a hole when you're sculpting. Like you accidentally dropped some distortion up here, and then it can kind of get kind of messy from there. If I just move this around, just sort of judging where it should be, and so you see the multi-res modifier. This is to optimize it so that it doesn't have to rotate all of that geometry at the same time. So that's actually saving your computer some work in that case. And all of the multi-res modifier works with, it saves all of it so from this mesh, and then if you use the displacement texture, I think it operates in the same way, where it saves it all as the geometry as displacement data. So it subdivides it and then pushes it out on every level, and that's how you get the final result. Yeah. So just working on this. And again, we're still getting some stretching in the topology over there. We could also insert another loop, and that can lead to some other issues that you have to clean up a little bit. When you add new geometry, you might get effects like random spikes, or seemingly random spikes, which is just like it has new geometry that it doesn't know what to do with, because you already made the modifier and then you add the geometry. Yeah, it really is. The tablet really makes a difference, for sure. Right here, using control, I'm just control like Digital said. I'm just going back and forth between the different, adding and subtracting, which you can also toggle right here. So now the default is subtracting, and then I hold down control to add. And yeah, so I'm going to turn this to the back and see, I think I have a picture of that on here. Yeah, right here. And you can see there's kind of a zigzag. When, wrinkles kind of settle from, pressure and, compression, when the ankles are turning. And they don't, if you look at your ankles, they are also like at an angle. The two joints that come out, I think the inner one is higher than the outer one. Yeah. And sometimes you just kind of have to use yourself as reference. It's kind of an awkward thing, but yeah. Anyway, but yeah, like in folds in general, you often get sort of a zigzag pattern in areas that are or have been compressed, and this is the result of memory in the material, the plasticity, which is its attempt to return to a previous shape. If this had total plasticity, you wouldn't get these wrinkles. And when you turn it down, it's like it's returning to the change that was created on it. So the less plasticity, the more breakable it is. Full plasticity is probably a gas, and then for that water, and then gel, and then there's like, then there's a curve, and then kind of at a sharp point of the curve, there's leather somewhere. So yeah, so just kind of putting this here. Let's get that. And this, you could use the cloth brush as well, but that gives you kind of less predictable results. And I think, I've seen at least the sculptor Ralph Garzetti, he says, simulations like A Marvelous Designer and stuff are really great. He's used them, but they remove artistic flair, because you don't have that artistic hand of prioritizing the details that I think adds to a lot of the charm in different things. So yeah, so that's why I'm sculpting these by hand. Yeah, and I hope you find my the videos I'm putting together more helpful. Right now I'm just kind of focusing on, I was working on some other stuff in the background, and I wasn't really recording my process, but because I wanted to get a finished result and sort of work out different workflows so that I have like, just to add more value to the things I have to share. I'm gonna make this positive again. Yeah. But yeah, the multi-res modifier is like, I think, the way to go. If you have a good base mesh, you can make most things. I'll probably do another tutorial on making clothes for your base mesh. And yeah, first I'm gonna need to do the video on good base meshes, because that's all really useful stuff to have. But yeah, it's Christmas season, and my relatives have agreed to make all our presents homemade, so there's a few last things I need to do for that. So in addition to work, I've been pretty busy with that. So we'll hopefully I want to get that out as soon as possible, and just be posting regularly, because I think if you get out of the flow, sometimes it can be hard to get back. Creating scenes, like you're thinking about like an environment, right? You're not referring to the last video where I kind of talked about like creating a scene for showing off your character. Yeah, so which one, yeah, could you clarify, do so? I think, I want to limit the amount of sculpting time on this. So I'm gonna set a timer for 5 more minutes, and then I'm gonna get into texturing this. Okay. So we have this. I think there's this sort of, there's always like a wrinkle right here where the shoe bends. I think most people, yeah, probably have a little bend there. Like a scene where they're like doing something, giving them some like personality. Yeah, that's definitely another level to have something for. When you're making a character, it's cool to make them game ready, but it's also really cool to show that you can sculpt them in certain expressions. So yeah, I guess like and that kind of gets into the area of storytelling and concept art, which maybe is a little bit beyond the scope of what I'm trying to focus on, but there's a lot. I mean, any story details matter, and it's important to show like what you can say about a character just with what they're wearing and their posture and how they're standing, and because if you typically in a studio, but it's cool to be able to do a lot of different things, and that's what I always try to be, but I think if you're applying for a character artist position, you want it to be very clear that your portfolio is geared that way, and you can have like different portfolios, but for different jobs with different art sets, but like they would need something like to focus on in your art. So yeah, so just kind of trying to keep the wrinkles simple. It's easy to overcomplicate them. Right here, and I've only blocked them out so far, so there's, we'll be pretty lucky if I get this done in 5 minutes. I mean, yeah, and this will never be, there's always more to do, but yeah. So if I look at this, just sort of blocking in that area where the laces are. And this part is also like sewn in. Like there's another layer. This part is all on top of this section. Yeah, so let's try to make this a little more distinct. So bring that out. Yeah, and I'm gonna run into an issue here because this pole ends right here, and this one ends right there. But I could just, maybe I can bring that pole over just with a loop slide. So that pole is traveling over here, and I'm kind of messing up the topology. And the more you shift this, you are going to get some smoothing here, because you're shifting that geometry. I do not, I would plan ahead next time so that I don't have to do this, because this is kind of a messy thing to do. You can lose a lot of your form shifting too much. Hey Bryce Todd, welcome to the live stream. Haven't seen you before. The resolution downscaling. Good question. I'm not actually sure. Maybe there's something in the preferences. I don't think that there's anything like modifier specific. I'll definitely look into that. Because that's kind of interesting. I think for the most part it's just kind of like a helpful thing. Like I guess I've never, I've only benefited from it because it just kind of makes your computer not work so hard. But I'll look into that. But yeah, and that was my timer right there. It's kind of a funny ringtone. It's just like the sounds of trains. I think I made it for some old project. It was like sounds from home or something, and it was coming from Chicago on the train. But yeah, so just kind of putting this in here, and there's like there's a very faint curve right here, this little point, and so I'm still sculpting. I'm kind of breaking what I said I was, the time constraint I was setting for myself, but so there's that point. And we wanted it stretched to the inside right there. I guess I'll just shift that out. This section won't be perfect, but for our purposes that's okay. I think ideally I'd want to make this part a separate object to put off of the shoe, and then you'd kind of make a simpler mesh and then bake that all onto it. You can benefit from just making things all from one object, but so let's focus on getting the silhouette looking right. So if I look at this, since I want to save time sculpting, I'm just gonna just sort of adjust things until I get something where I'm like, okay, it's shaped like the shoe, and then I can start texturing to add detail just for the stream. It's the only thing that stopped you. I wouldn't, I think for me, I feel like multi-res has really been worth it because it preserves all the geometry, and and it's just really efficient, and when you're done, you can control the detail depending on how much you need. And I think It bothered me definitely. I think when I was first working with it, and I wasn't expecting. I didn't know it was a thing, right? That was part of it, and then over time I just kind of got used to it. Because the thing is, like, you can't add strokes when it's rotating anyway, because you can only do one command in Blender at a time, really any program. So I liked so that kind of just is something I kind of got used to, a quirk about it. But yeah, I imagine there must be a way to turn that off. Yeah, so great question. So I'll do a video on this so it's searchable for people in the future, but so there are 3 ways of sculpting. There's Downscaling, right? But the issue with that is that the benefit of that is that you're constantly adding geometry, right? So if we look at this and I go into sculpt mode and I press Control D for Downscaling, or I can check that up here. When this is most useful for the snake hook, which if you look at ZBrush has the same tool and is actually made for that. So that's this right here, and it differs from the grab brush, where this doesn't add more geometry, and it by the way, Downscaling triangulates everything when you create it, which triangles aren't, they're made out to be scary because of topology, but there's a lot of misconceptions about that. And I think I might talk about that a little bit in my retopology videos, but in topology just should, quads are more organized for UV and wrapping, but this will deform fine or whatever. But this is a quick way to add geometry. I know you weren't asking about that, but it's important to go over the differences. Well, the main issue with this is in order for this to function and have this, and it turns off when you leave the viewport. In order for this to function, it's literally recalculating the mesh every stroke, every frame, and so it can get really slow when you have a lot of geometry, and that's why they use voxel remesh, which ZBrush also uses, and this is amazing, and I've used it many times, and still will when I want just quick topology that I want to work with that's dense and doesn't have to be recalculated. And that's the nice thing about this is it's not taking much time. This is how many verts is this? 100,000 about. Hey, Humongous Blaze, welcome back. Sorry if you missed me again. Took a few days break. If you were kind of used to the daily November live stream, done with that for a while. But yeah. So anyways, back to this. The voxel remesher. You have detail, and this is great, but it's not clean topology. And what I mean by that is, if we look at this, it solves the topology here. It's all quads, beautiful, right? But let's see, the issues are more obvious if you have, curved geometry. It's an efficient way of recalculating geometry. Yeah, even this, if I remesh this, and go into edit mode, I think, and then edge mode, that's probably the easiest way for you to see. I'll zoom in right here. It solves it with these, and if you look at this edge flow, it's all over the place. This is a very good example of, quads gone wrong. If you want clean edge flow, which makes selections easier and UV and wrapping easier if you have those clean edges. So for that reason, that you have to always retopologize quad remesh. But with the multi-res modifier, you could use the multi-res modifier along with the shrink wrap modifier to do some retopology, and I haven't done in that way. I haven't covered that in my retopology video, but that's also really useful because it's like a subdivision modifier with more levels of control. Because you can move things and control the subdivision level. So so in short, Downtop was great for freedom if you don't care about geometry or performance. quad remesh is great for sculpting and getting quick geometry, and then this quad remesh is perfect for working with something that has good topology and has good control over the level of detail. So great question, Bryce. Thanks for that. So let's get this done. I guess I wanted to be done with this a little earlier, but here, if we make this sharp, that's kind of the opposite of smooth in terms of curvature, so we can use that to sort of affect that silhouette. And for the base of this shoe, if I want this nice even heel right here, I might even add more geometry here, like a little extrude, because maybe that makes more sense for it. That might be an issue with the multi-res. Let's just try it. But this is a good example of like an issue with multi-res is it gets this sharp geometry, which is actually kind of an issue because, like I was talking about earlier, it's based on displacement. Right now I'm just smoothing out, and that's really the only solution I can come up with at this point. And then you have that, and this will only take us far. Once this stuff isn't overlapping, it's a lot easier to deal with, because then it gets all confused. And right now I have this move set to sharp, and that's why we're getting these points here. Tutorial on sculpting a face. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'd be surprised if I didn't cover it at some point. Sculpting the head, and there'll be more character sculpting to come, and I think there's a lot of love for head sculpts out there, so I think I'll definitely cover it at some point in DSO. So and then there's a very clear thickness right here. This increases right there, and the issue with sculpting with a lot of these brushes is it's going to be wobbly and inconsistent, and so the one brush that's good for that is the layer brush. And this is actually, if I go to the tool, we want to be aware of the height of, so this is great because so when you paint something and then paint it on top, it creates layers. I just changed the brush accidentally, but and so right now I'm not using real units. This is actually a giant boot. It's probably like 8 meters long or something. I doubled that. So on the y-axis, right? So it's 6 meters long. I think an average shoe. I'm in the U.S., so everything's in inches. Yeah, if I look at this, we can. Clay strips is great for very gradually controlling the flow of things, and you kind of get that cool texture, but it can also look sort of unpolished. So you always want to make sure to clean that up later. That's the layer brush is useful for a specific case like this. But it's not like non-destructive in that, like, just because you have an even thickness with the first stroke, and you can set it so that it remembers. So let's look at how this works. So with this setting, this is going to be significantly bigger, 0.05 meters. So, and this was like, 0.25, so this is like a fifth the thickness, but that doesn't seem right. Okay, whatever, but I like that thickness, and I could adjust that if I didn't, and we can, it has that even thickness, but if I go over it, it's just going to layer on top of it, which, to fix that, we use check persistent and set persistent base, so the height's going to be based on what we have right here. So if I put this in, and then I, press, that didn't do what I wanted it to. So set persistent base, I clicked that. And then, oh yeah, so now it's working correctly. So it's erasing just based on that level. So it's kind of in increments, separated in a section. Both you and Flycat use them. I consider both of you very good sculptors, so so it is good. Yeah, clay strips is great, for sure. And okay, so I think maybe, yeah, right here I'll just have to clean that up. But, you know, that existed before I used the layer thing, so just have to do that later. Because once I stop using this, it will forget the position of this. And yeah, I'm still getting some wobbliness here, so I'll have to check out Flycat. I haven't heard of that, but of that artist. But cool, yeah. If you think they're good sculptors, I'm sure there's stuff I could learn from there too. Always cool to see other people's workflows. Yeah. So if you look at this, so we have. I'm still sculpting. I want to do some texturing because that's so not well covered with Blender. But yeah, right here I'm just kind of fudging these wrinkles. Yeah, let's use the clay strips. I think this is good. Also good for like sort of controlling, because it's so gradual. You have a good control over the flow of the geometry. Sometimes I use the normal matte cap right here, but it's kind of hard to look at. But it really, because it's so vibrant, I wish there was like a dimmer version of it. But it's really helpful for if you know how normal maps work. Y is perpendicularly up from your view, and you know, blue represents the z-axis, so that's you know, from a top view it's further down, and then red is across, and so that you kind of have a clear idea of where things are flowing. In matcaps, it's all based on the normals, the directions things are facing, but this is you know, it's, if you know how normal maps work, it can be kind of intuitive to work with. Yeah. So we have this isn't perfect still, you know. It takes time. Oh, he only has time lapses? Okay. Does he talk in them? Yeah, now I brought up that side, but not this. Let's try to make that match. At this point, it's kind of reminding me of like a cartoon nose, like Mickey Mouse or Hobbs, from Calvin Hobbs or something. But yeah, here I'm just using the clay strips brush. It's at this point the best way to control that. I could line it with draw sharp maybe, just so that we get that detail going across it. Yeah, following him and learning something's difficult. Yeah, that's too bad. Yeah, that's awesome doing all those time lapses. For me, like I make them using recorded with OBS and then Blender, you know, and it's really big video files, and then it takes a while to render. So it's impressive if you can, you know, churn out a bunch of those. Yeah, I can see this is turning up because like it's all yellow, so it's facing upwards, which is kind of cool to have. And maybe I can add more volume here. Clay strips, and you can actually also make sure this is flat by using the scrape brush. That's really useful for polishing things, and you can even use it to make sort of like a robot effect. And a lot of times people think you want to use smooth for everything, but that actually just kind of blurs everything out, all your details that you spend time sculpting. So, flattening, and this is filling, so it's the opposite of scraping, where scraping takes off the top, and then filling adds to the bottom until it's flat. It's really useful to have. So I'm very dedicated to getting this right. I feel like time goes by faster with this compared to nodes, maybe because I enjoy it a bit more. So I'm not really sure how much time has passed. And let's fix this toe there. If we look at, I actually have a picture of the heel here, so we can see how off I was there. Let's make this big, so just to be assured that it influences up there. And then perpendicular 7, make sure that we're moving it. Control 7, so that's the bottom view. 7 would be top view, so it kind of inverts, flips that view selection. Yeah, doing like a full workflow. Again, doing the easy one. Yeah, so that's accessible for like beginners. Yeah, that's a really great idea. I'll look into it. What's your take on Gumroad and Patreon? Like, what models do you think like people are more likely to be a part of, or I don't know. I'll ultimately make my own decision, but it's kind of interesting. Yeah, I'm probably not going to take the time to sculpt up the base, but so we have this here. I think I'll be covering a lot of different things that people are likely to search on YouTube, and I think doing a paid tutorial is a really great idea. And I might end up retopologizing this, so like Bryce, making using quad remesh might have been fine in this case, but going back to your question, if you're still there, why take, it takes more time to add 5 subdivision, but that takes like 30-second difference, but I don't know, it's nice to have the flow and to have the option to control the detail, and even if I was using retopology, the multi-res would be involved, and I'll probably cover that in a later video. There's some things that haven't really been covered, like that. I haven't seen a video exactly on that, and and that's another type of video what I like to make is like, oh, I said it first, maybe other people will make it later, and now everybody has information, so now it's just, which makes me less special, but it's nice to, it's nice to say I said it first. Detailed sculpting is more like intermediate to advanced level. Yeah, I think you're right. I think I always like to make things as accessible to everyone as possible. Like watching this, I think, there's something that anybody could take from it that would be beneficial. I think you're totally right. And in terms of like, if somebody was considering it and they'd be like, yeah, it seems like a bit beyond me, Okay, so right here to flatten this, see there's kind of a rounded base. We can use this sculpt brush, and we can see again with the normal map that we're getting kind of a gradient. And this, it's curving towards Y. So this actually means there's kind of a curve there, which is what we want. And yeah. So that's enough detail from down there. And I haven't done the laces. So there are 8 laces on this, and I can level detail in the viewport when I'm not sculpting. You can set as different. Yeah. So let's not block the chat. So if I so here's a cool thing. If I use mesh and then circle, and then it doesn't need to be 32, more like 12, still preserves the, that level of detail, and it's going to be really small, these rings. Fill so that I can inset it, and then delete face, and then I'm gonna inset it. So now we have a nice ring that I can put along this. Right now the scale is probably a little bit off still, and even the depth of that ring, but I can just get in the right position, then I'll be able to make a better call. Snap to face, align rotation to target, and hopefully it'll snap correctly. There can be some issues with this, but yeah. And right now it's to closest. We use the median, so that'll take the origin point right there. Yeah. Yeah, and immediately I'm seeing, let's sort of scale this down. To make sure it's relative to this object, I press Shift Z twice, and then let's your keyboard's lagging, so if you don't write symbol. Oh, sorry, I need to catch up a little bit. If you want more people to come, I think the best way to do some very nice low poly beginner tutorial series. People just love to watch them. Oh, that's a good point. Okay. Yeah, I'll take that advice. Yeah, keeping. Yeah, and if I'll just use the instance of this, so this is the same as that object, and if I look at this, now we can. Now, if I use linear offset, it'll affect these other ones, but in an even sort of way. Like this, the circles of influence is really big right here. But yeah, now it'll kind of preserve that sort of width there. Still a bit off. But yeah, so now I can scale it just using the world, so I don't have to press Shift S twice. And yeah, you can just scale directly. So I don't need that anymore, just goodbye. And then, yeah, we can shade smooth, and then, yeah, it's not perfect shading there, but it's so small that it doesn't matter so much. And if I copy this, let's just try to get the spacing right on the first go. So we have 8 of these going up. So that tells me I was about right about the height, the dimensions of this. If on that first go I got that spacing good. Yeah, it's not totally accurate. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much all of this is not totally accurate, but in terms of the rings, yeah, it doesn't look right. I think I have it too close to this edge, so bring that over a little bit. And let's get the scaling right again. So Alt R to reset the rotation, and that in there. And then, yeah, let's get the other side. With Alt-E, like, you can just snap, like, it's a very quick way to place objects. So you could really set up a scene fast with that. Yeah, let's fix some of this spacing. Why don't I even start on the top? Bring this down there. Yeah, you can share. That's fine. Yeah, maybe if you mention their names, they'll get tagged in the video, and then it'll bring more people here. Maybe. So, yeah, it's fine. That was more of a joke than anything, but yeah. So 8 here and 8 here, and here's the complex weaving of So let's try using a curve. Let's see if I can pull this off. So, you know, haven't done this before. You know, it's not often that I choose to make shoes, or, but, you know, they're a useful part of a character, so. I'm just gonna, if I reset this, if I start with this, I think it shouldn't be curve. You know what? If I just do this with a mesh, I think it's gonna go a lot faster for me. So if I go into edit mode and then merge at center, let's go to wireframe. I should have one point that I get to use. So I'm gonna turn off snapping. If I go, so you see here, we have one vert right here. You can see according to this down here. So that's right click, scene statistics, if that isn't shown for you. And yeah, so we can just move that around with snapping. And I don't need a line rotation. That kind of gives you annoying results sometimes. Wait. Let me get this right. So it goes there, and then it goes, yeah, it's a zigzag, so alternates, and then there's another one on the other side. Oh, yeah, so this goes down here, and there. It can be modeled in 1 hour in detailed sculpting. You make just boots 1 hour, and you're a pro. Grambit also started. You make just boots 1 hour, and you're a pro. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm familiar with Grant Abbott's tutorials. I remember you mentioned him in a previous one as well. You know, is almost. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, he's like one of the most well-known. Yeah, I know of him. I just said it, right. So. Yeah, that's a good point. Like I didn't think about all that. Yeah, thanks for that too. So. And in this case, the laces kind of end at this point. And then, I guess, let me just tie this real quick so I have something to reference. So there's the lace. Yeah, and this is, I mean, now that this is tied in this image, it's a lot tighter that I have it in the sculpt. Yeah, but yeah, so if we go into wireframe, and then I do that for the other side, right? Is that what's going on? Oh yeah, I mean, it's one lace, I forgot. I forgot how laces work, and I decided to do a live stream where I make boots. Jeez. It goes down there. I guess I missed a button. Classic. Okay. if I go up here, bring that there, there. Yeah, I guess I want to. Yeah, these buttons don't match much, but it's artsy. It's art, not realism, I guess. So all the ones going. I'm looking at this and it's like all the ones going in this direction. So if I use this edge select, each of these ones, it might be hard for you to see, so I'm sorry about that. That's just the Blender viewport, which is amazing, you know, since like all the improvements since 2.81, but you know, there's I wanted to scale this along normals to bring it up, but then I remembered this isn't a real mesh, so I'm just gonna GZ, bring it up, and bring it in there. Yeah, so I think I'm onto something here. But then so these all tuck when they reach this other side. So maybe I can subdivide these and then use this. It brings it in here. So it's going, this part goes under when it reaches that, and then, yeah. And I could, you know, it might be better to do this completely with curves, but I think, you know, you spend most of your time doing poly modeling, so you're kind of used to that. There's a little bit of unpredictability with curves. And you'll see I'll eventually convert this to curves so that I get a nice, you know, cylinder pipe to work with. Yeah, I think Blender's really catching up. I know with sculpting, you know, ZBrush is a program made specifically for sculpting, but like, you know, the main things are just building up geometry. Like, you don't need a lot of complex brushes to make really cool things, and Blender had the cloth brush, which pushed ZBrush to do the same thing. So I really like how Blender's challenging ZBrush, and you know, there's something to learn from every program because they kind of force you to think in different ways, and you know, and yes, don't be limited by just Blender artists, and think, you know, look at another tutorial and see like that's possible on a computer, and it's all just data, just, you know, different programs put it together in different ways, and they're kind of, you know, the difference in performance is probably not going to affect you as much as it affects you to maybe spend time thinking about like how much that performance affects. Like, you know, I recommend when you're making something, break it. You work on it until it breaks, pretty much. Convert this to hide that, so I can just cut down here. Oh, the cut tool doesn't work if there's no geometry, I guess. So I'm just gonna have to Control R, put that in there. A little tedious right there. And then if I snap that, just like I did before, we have that on mesh. Oh, and these aren't project individual elements, so that'll snap to the mesh, just like I did in my retopology tutorial. I have to go to sleep, 3:30 here. Thanks so much, DSO, I really appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know if these videos are worth you missing sleep. That's really valuable, so I hope you get plenty of rest in the morning. And yeah, really take care. Thanks for watching. And should I... okay, so yeah, let's model the laces right here. So I'm gonna copy this. It doesn't need to be in front of it, I'll just shift it over at the end, but I'm gonna sort of fake it a little bit right here, so this part comes out, and then there's a little, you know, you can't really see what I'm looking at here, but I'm just sort of sketching where you get these laces from. When I convert this to a curve, there isn't going to be any curvature in the curve, which is like why it shouldn't really be called a curve then. Did I really convert it? But yeah, this will. Yeah, this will be. So this is the other side of the loop, and then I think, yeah, this is a little bit strong. So 3D cursor is great for rotating around that. I wish more programs had that. Like, why hasn't anybody picked up on that? But if I use this, we had a discontinued line here that, oh, so this was actually from, wow, it's kind of humbling to be just like caught up about tying your shoes. It brings me back to like when I was younger. When I was like, in the second grade, and I remember the point where my teacher was like, if you want your shoes tied, you have to do it yourself, because I'd always ask, So we have this here, and there's this kind of loop that wraps around it. Oh, turn off proportional edit, toggle with O. Oh, and sorry, I'm covering the shortcut keys right there. If I bring that forward, so this is all gonna have loop, and then I'm gonna sort of hide this edge right here. So bring that out. Control Shift B bevels vertices, which is really helpful. It can simplify things a lot. And let's hide that, and then use proportional edit to sort of bring this back. I'm gonna use smooth offset, like you use them for most things, but because it's just like it's kind of sculptorly to do that. I wonder if can you even edit verts? I'm gonna save this before I try this, but in case this crashes it. But yeah, you can't sculpt verts because it depends on the faces. But yeah, so we have this here. And let's see, shortest path, so shift right click, and then from the active one, control shift click, shortest path. I guess it didn't have to hold shift on the first one, but oh, and then turn off proportional edit. It's just trying to make this the right width, and then yeah, let's just there we have that, and yeah, it's not to scale, so I'll be adjusting that as well. Link select, or yeah, I can just drag click. I'm using right click select. That's a lot easier on the hands. It's what I'm also used to, but yeah, Blender, they did a beginners 2.8, which I kind of watched through just to review stuff and see if there's anything I missed, and they talked about why right click is still more efficient and easier on the hands, more ergonomic. Like, I think more programs should be left click. Right click, because it distribute. You use the right click, you use the left click already for a lot of different things. So, just so putting it on the right hand sort of makes it easy. Makes it a little easier on your fingers. Distributes that work. Yeah. So I have all of that. The laces. Wow. And then convert to a curve. All right, so right here, geometry, and I think if we increase the depth, yeah, we get some pipes right here. Extrude would give you sort of like a plane. You could use that for like road tracks or something. Yeah, and we have some issues here. These sharp points, unforeseen. I think I could adjust the width of that. It's either control A. No, I think that's with this. I'm thinking of the shrink wrap modifier. If I got a curve, I can maybe discover control points. So we have tilt, so scale, if it exists, should be somewhere close. Calculate handles. Smooth curve radius. Sorry, I'm kind of learning right now with you guys. Hope this is helpful. What did I subdivide it? Oh, so that's kind of nice. Because then I can bring it closer to the edge. So, and then I could, can I use proportional edit? Okay, so now I have like more points to work with here. This is kind of like intensive. Like you don't need this many points, but there are ways to sort of simplify that. So with proportional edit, I'm kind of smoothing this out. I'm sure there's a way to simplify the curve dynamically. I know there is for the grease pencil, which also relies on curves, I believe. So if I grow the selection, can I just hide this one part of it? Yeah, so now I'm only editing this part, and I think proportional edit will only mess up this area. Mess up. Let's make this sharp. I want to modify the thickness of this. If anybody tells me on the stream, you're a lifesaver. If you could Google that real quick. Radius. Okay, I guess I'll just use these tools. Fine. I guess I don't get to use the hotkeys for everything. Yeah. So if I have, let's focus on these points. Maybe if I bring these forward, it can kind of mask the sharpness at the end. So I think those points are really distracting. So I'll have to do this in two parts. Reselect that later, because these kind of move in the same direction. Actually, if I just select the corners, I can bring those in, and then if I make this bigger, sort of, maybe we can get, I'm going to change this to view, and then, so this will bring it in and out based on my point of view. So when I press G, Z, because that's what the Z-axis refers to for your viewpoint. So this is what, you change up your transform orientations. Yeah, not everything about 3D modeling is sexy and quick. I'm sure, you could just photo scan all this, then it would look amazing. Take a second, but I think understanding 3D and making those forms and making them usable is really important. Oh yeah, so I'm making a mistake. If I remember, this goes under and this goes over. So let's fix that right here. Let's turn off proportional editing. Right there. Maybe I can just rotate it from the point, so R, and R rotates along a gimbal. So click, control, right click. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm covering the hotkeys again, but if you've been following those along close enough, you probably, that closely, you probably know them by now. Yeah. Yeah. Let's just make this a little nicer. Come on. So this wrinkle, it actually carries down to the toe right there. Y is totally off. And kind of like the most extreme area that it bends is like right there. So gotta show that. Otherwise it's completely wrong. And bring that right here. If you notice, like careful thing with cloth is the overlapping right here. So this is being on top of there. So I kind of try to smooth that out. So this kind of runs from this and not on top of it, like, kind of happens when you go there. Here's some issues with topology, so I'm just using this topology brush to sort of fix that. And yet, like, again, with the quad remesh, if you don't want to worry about topology, if you just, then that's good. You think it looks very good? Thanks a lot, Blaze. Appreciate it. Anything helps, keeps me going. Oh, and here, I went a bit extreme, so yeah, I think flatten is perfect for that. Because now if I look at this, make it less pointy. Just like this is right planar relationship, it's just a bit extreme. And then, missing some compression on the toe right here. So if I look at this, so I have to, good rule of thumb when you're starting out and actually studying things is look at the thing more than you're looking at your piece of art. So, and then you'll eventually get sort of a feel where you can look at where you'll just know where you are on what you're working at, wherever you are, and you'll look over to keep yourself updated on where you are, and then, but like that, if you get good at that, you can free up how much you're actually looking at your piece, so you can look more at your reference. And reference is not cheating. It's, everybody uses reference professionally. It's essential for knowing that you're in the right. Because assuming that you're in the right, and training yourself to think that you're always in the right is not very good practice. This, I was just remembered this one, the only time I've ever been to Disney World, and one of the memories that stuck out to me was, I remember this kid was trying to step on like Donald Duck's, or maybe it was Goofy's boots, and Goofy seemed really upset about it. He was like, "Don't do that. It's not nice, I'm getting a little confused on the boot right here with the wrinkles. It's easy to kind of get lost with that. Let's tone this down. That's too extreme now I'm looking at it. And there's actually more of an arc there. I say too extreme and then I take a big cut out of it. Too extreme, not extreme enough. You kind of go back and forth. Need to go? Okay, thanks, Humongous Blaze. Thanks for watching. And, and all your comments. It's always helpful to, have a tap on what people actually want to watch. And when I hear them doing the right thing, that's also really nice to hear. Yeah. Yes, now we have that section. We just have sitting on top of this, and then Bring that over here. Let's save it. And then weave lights in the scene. Oh yeah, this I forgot. This is tiny. It's to scale. You know, change this back to the normal orientation. Let's put on a plane. Reset that position, and then use snapping. Snap to the face down there. GG. Some weird project individual elements. That's the issue. So bring that. Oh, and it's closest because right now it's based on the origin. When I have it set to median. Yeah, and this lighting so extreme, right? It's just add a light here. Yeah, it's not bad, right? You know, I think if you work on this a lot longer, there's a lot of adjustments you might make to the wrinkles. I've still got to texture it, right? And I'm getting a little tired too, and it's only 8:45 for me, so I think I need to do some self-care stuff after this, you know? Let's save it. If I go into texture paint mode and do some shading on this. First thing when you texture things, you always got to UV map it. I'm just going to, well, and nice thing about multi-res is like you can unwrap it from this, which is going to give you the simplest layout, and it'll assure that if you unwrap it from here, it'll work for all levels of detail, so you can adjust that, which is really, really useful. And yeah, so if I unwrap this, and it's still, like, it's not that far off from being a cube. This is how it's unwrapped. If I copy this geometry and apply the modifiers, so we have a version, you know, without all the other components. It looks like it looks like a cube, but there's where I extrude it. That's where you get the repeated area. So like here is the same as something down here probably. Interesting. So, oh yeah, wireframe. So I'm selecting through it. So that, and then, so yeah, you can see how it wraps around and maps to that. But yeah, so this isn't. And if I were to unwrap it here, it'd be really slow, and you would get some weird distortions. The more geometry there is with curvature, the more it's going to throw off your UV unwrapping. So keeping it simple is really helpful for this. So unwrap, I don't have any seam set, so it's not really going to do much. And then in this case, I was planning on removing this geometry, but I'd probably re-topologize it in this case because of this weird thing with the boot where it's actually hollow, and you know, sculpting was more easier if it's not physically hollow. So you know, because this other side behaves differently than this side. That's about the normals. If you've heard about those. So in this case, you could use, how should I unwrap this? I could put a seam right down the middle, and it needs to, yeah, sort of wrap around there. If you have a good margin size and pixel resolution, this, you know, won't be so visible, but you know, it's just put that there. I think right here we have overlapping geometry. That's what that white shows, I believe. Yeah, we might just be well off with cube projection and packing it. So I'm gonna copy this, and it has the same UVs, and if I subdivide it, well, yeah, apply this, and yeah, if I select this selection to active, so this is the active model. Now they're in the same place, and let me select the one with the modifier and hide that. save it again. And yeah, let's texture it. So we have, maybe I could quickly, just put something on this. If you give it a little bit of subsurface, that gives it some softness. Doesn't totally make sense for this, but it's just like, when you have a haze of strands around there, this works to sort of make it soft. Because, when you have these thin strands, it is shining and revealing the areas underneath. So it is kind of doing what you would expect subsurface to do. But it would be pretty much no color. So make sure subsurface radius is some value that's even. So this affects how much it blurs it, and also these correspond to RGB, red, green, blue. So keeping them even. The preset, has red turned up, and yeah. So maybe that'll work. If I make this base color darker, and then let's add a how does it wrap to this? I know nice thing about curves is that they're actually kind of already wrapped. Let's use something obvious like a checker texture. So yeah, you can see I was kind of stretching some places. Maybe this is partly because, well, yeah, so this is from point to point. It wraps and repeats in that space. And let's kind of sort of fix the scale of that. I'm just using checker texture because it's really obvious, where the repetitions lie. And yeah, maybe I'll just throw a, let's use a magic texture, why not? Because, let's use a wave texture. There's kind of a nice knit texture on this, and you could use a image alpha or something, but I'm not going to take the time to look for that online. But I can show you, dark values and light values. Use that to get the bump here. You only need to use black and white, so just have that there. And if you look in this, it's right there. I was sampling just the texture. I have the Node Wrangler add-on right there, so I can sample that real quick. And turn down the strength. And smooth it out. And right now, you could add some distortion. Gives it a little bit of variation. In this case, not very visible what's going on, but yeah, that's kind of cool. Sure. The subsurface I think is sort of, maybe it's not big enough to matter, and it is like extra calculation. So keep that in mind. It's an extra overlay in the case of Eevee, and it's extra light bounces in the case of cycles to get a clear surface. Yeah, so I guess in the end I kept that off, but I stand by the stuff I said. Right here, I think with the boot, I'm going to focus on getting that scruff on it, and to do that, we are going to combine two materials. If I look at this, let's focus on making this material, turn on the roughness. Yeah, so we have this nice reflective black. I think this is actually too dark. It's unrealistically dark. Just a little bit of saturation. That's like the amount of color. Yeah, so, and then another principled shader. Wait. And then plugging that into here, we'll get, let's use sort of a light gray, turn up the roughness all the way. And that means it'll give us no reflection. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, and this is through a mix shader, so we're not getting a true. We were getting part of this material. That's where the reflection was coming from. And yeah, so we'll get some noise in here. We could use. It's a little unpredictable, the results of this, but in this case, I think having randomness. I guess we could use noise texture. That's more predictable than the white noise texture because that's like every point is a random thing. And then let's use object coordinates. That'll make it nice and even. And yeah, if you turn up the detail, this is just noise within noise. just like a fractal of noise, essentially. Just repeating detail on different scales. Except it's not repeating, it's totally random, but the fact that that randomness quality repeats on all those different levels. Yeah, linear light will insert variation going up and down, so brings everything above 0.5 up and everything below 0.5 down. And yeah, I'm seeing like a little bit of green or something. So it's, yeah. And then we have something totally ridiculous here. But the reason I'm using this is if I just have this texture, and it's black, yeah, let's make it 1024. I think that's plenty, based on like how close it's going to be to the camera. But let's actually double that, so we can actually change it afterwards if I select the image. And let's name it boot alpha. If I look at this image, it should always be a power of 2, so that's 2 times 2 times 2, how many times, and because that's more efficient for computers, just the way data is organized and stored. Everything's in binary, which means it's based on 2. So if I look at this, it's going to show one of these 2 materials right here. Yeah, so it's giving us this material. Yeah, let's make it a little bit darker. Maybe that was fine. It was in a better place there. And yeah, the sculpt isn't, it'll look cooler, when I have more texture too. So we have that to look forward to. So when I paint white, if you look at this texture, when I add an alpha to this as well, so we have this texture mask, but we have the wrong settings here, so use random and rake. This is how I'm going to do my laces. Yeah, there's a few things to adjust there, but actually, let's make another brush, and yeah, remove this, and we're just gonna, let's make another texture. So brush mask, new, and then instead of image, let's use clouds. And that's sort of like a random rough, but we can control where it is, which is really nice. So now you can see I'm already getting some detail there. And voila, we now have Substance Painter in Blender, right? We'll be making a lot more videos on how to do this. I think we want a sharp value between, these 2 materials. We don't want a gradient, a mixing of the reflectiveness where it's kind of reflective, kind of not. And so we want to do that. We can use a math node and set this to greater than. Let's save this. So if I have this threshold, we can control where these different materials are showing up. Yeah, and if I press X, that swaps between the 2 colors selections that I have. And yeah, maybe we could even plug this into the bump on the rough texture right here, the noise. Yeah, so it should be plugged into the height, just the second to last output right there. So kind of a bullseye right there, hitting the right spot. But put that in there. Sort of getting this alpha there. You're seeing this is making, we're focusing on this area. That's the area, only area that's going to show. I'm just controlling the amount of influence we have on that. And then overall combining those, the noise that we use to control the base color variation. So we're starting to get something more resembling, but like this isn't quite the same kind of wear that we have on this texture, but yeah, I guess that's as close as I'm gonna take it. So let's get painting, and maybe we can adjust these values more. But let's turn down the strength. Let's make this a lot more subtle. Adjust this greater than value. It's not such a sharp. Like I'd think it'd be like 0.5 would be good, but not really. Well, if we increase the strength, just more of a range to work with probably. Do we not have the image selected? That would be why it's pink. Yeah. Oh yeah. So that's sometimes it just kind of forgets. I think there's a lot that needs to be worked on. A lot more love that's needed in texture painting. But yeah. Yeah. So we're starting to get stuff. Well, we're getting paint there, but not over there. Trying to work it out. Okay, so it is there. It's just the threshold is limiting it. Okay, so let's work from this. So right now I'm making this darker. I'm not really liking. You know what? I'm just going to use this one material, and then I'm going to use this as the roughness in this. Let's just keep it simple as possible. So right here it's going to be totally shiny. So let's actually reset this Alt-R, and then we can change the color here. And this should be similar to the overall value that we want. Yeah, so that looks about right. And let's add some, and we can't really see what we're doing so much here, but a white will make it rougher in some areas. And if you can take advantage of like that when you use an angle, there's some stretching in the noise distortion. Maybe we could use a instead we could use if we use clouds, we can see this preview here. If we change this to Voronoi, or Voronoi Crackle, yeah, get some sharper values. Oh, yeah, let's flip the color ramp here. So you can only really see it if it's being reflected. That's somewhat of an issue. Maybe we can make it a little bit lighter based on that position. Let's use a color ramp to sort of control that. So yeah, that's another way, like instead of mixing two materials, you could just do it material quality by material quality. And if we change this to B-spline, we get more of a gradual sort of fades off of a curve. And then let's make that dark green that we want, so turn up the saturation. And then, yeah, so I'm trying to add the scruff to this boot here, but it's not totally accurate, I think, but we're kind of capturing the feel. I think if somebody looked at this, they'd be like, yeah, that feels right, but if I were doing this for a job, I might want it to be a bit more accurate. Control, I think, switches to the other value right here, so I can bring the black back, but we still have that mask there, so that's something to be aware of, that we're actually making it darker than it originally was. you bring these closer together, you kind of minimize how much. So kernel is also a nice curve, and then it's like B-spline except it terminates there. So it's nice to have. So this is inverted. If you just use S, tap it, there's no clicking involved. You can just get different qualities. Let's change this back. Again, you could do procedural stuff, but this is really what's going to give you, sort of an artistic quality where you have control over where details are, rather than like just evenly distribute across it or something. And I could be using some custom alphas also, and I'll be making more of those. Making videos on how to make those. But yeah, for the sake of time, I'm not going to do much digging for that. So let's remap this roughness a bit. And then it shouldn't be like totally reflective. Close to it, but not. Yeah. And how long has this stream been going for? Hour and 43 minutes? Okay. Wow, I've made much worse things with nodes in more time. This should paint through this since these are separate objects. So I don't need to worry about like hiding them or hiding the strings. So that's kind of a useful thing to keep in mind. Right here, like I'm painting this right now, and maybe I'd have to bake this to another thing and sort of clean it up. Do with this area, but in this case I think it'll be fine. Just to leave it as is. Just extra time, things you guys probably don't even want to see, so you'd rather see other things, what I mean. I'll see you anyway. Everybody's different. Let's save it. And let's save this image. And if I actually use pack, it saves to the image. But I need to make sure to save this file again after doing that. So yeah, we're getting something nice. I think maybe this is too dark still. Okay. Yeah, and that's the thing about kernel and much. It's some, if we, let's try ease. That gives us like an S curve, and that's kind of why I don't like it generally, but I think it'll be fine. Too dark. just looks kind of faded. I think that's why I'm avoiding making it so light. But, maybe give it a little bit of a blue tint. That's better. And then, yeah, just, oh, I'm in sculpt mode. I didn't realize. Yeah, I think in sculpt mode the texture doesn't show up. No? Oh, it does. Cool. And you have to keep that in mind if you're painting on like a sharp angle, it's all projecting the textures, so you get kind of a weird result there. Let's sample this value so I can get that again. Just apply it to this side. Sort of adding kind of some wear and variation in it where it doesn't really exist in the original reference, but that's just to give it more, make it more readable if you have more variation and reflection. So it's like, oh, it's like a musty boot now. So let's try different lighting setup. Let's just try it top down. Scale that down. It's so wobbly, the sculpting work on here. This is just so clearly wrong. I just want to, minimize just a little bit the issues with this. And then maybe actually bring it over to this side. But I can't change this too much. Don't want to mess up these laces. So I have stuff snapping to that. It's a separate object. Yeah, and we could also use this as a bump. I think in Substance it's called an anchor point. I'm getting some, there's some horribly obvious effects here, but if I flip that, get that indent there. Yeah, extreme, we can reduce the distance to smooth it out. I always do that before adjusting strength. So kind of adjust both while smoothing out the values. Let's try 0.005. Yeah, so that's still like plenty. Invert it, and decrease the strength. Yes, so now we have kind of like this aged boot. It's kind of cool, and that makes the texture painting a lot more satisfying looking. So look in here. I want more scruff on the edge than back here. So if I sample the darker color, I can just bring that back. And then I didn't like those scratches there, so reduce that. That's cool. Yeah. And it's not totally accurate, but hey, if it looks good, it looks good, right? And then this is independent of, material shading view, and that's nice because it's sort of, more of an even lighting setup. It's like a HRI that's internal to Blender that it's using. Yeah. And like here you could add more of it wear around maybe like the peak of these wrinkles or something. That could give you more of an effect there. I think the color isn't changing because it's not very deep. No, but the values are capping there. yeah, so I'm getting this. Yeah, and this is kind of serving a different purpose now. I think the roughness, it's still shiny there, so should be in line with what we're doing here. So yeah, that's a little bit back. And that could be like a bit of bleeding after the height difference, so we can, yeah, bring this, so notice like this position is a little bit further back. If you line these up, the color terminates in a different spot. Yeah, so we can adjust the slope kind of by bringing these closer and further away, which is really awesome. And yeah, and let's make it more reflective. I was liking it when it was, yeah, like that. And yeah, so I guess that's pretty good for today. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. You know, we got most of the way there. We still have the sole left. You know, the stitching patterns around here, I wanted to add that. And I know exactly how I do it, just didn't get to it, unfortunately. So, yeah, kind of funny materials. You know, not accurate to the original, still kind of looks interesting, and it was just kind of easier to do. But yeah, so I hope you guys found this helpful. And yeah, have a great day. Thanks.